Effective 1st July 2014, Zambia will see an increase in the amount of electricity, and that is because the Energy Regulation Board has allowed the power utility firm Zesco to increase electricity tariffs. Today on the program, Your Platform, will be talking about this particular adjustment as we speak to officials from Zesco, you, the consumers, and of course the Energy Regulation Board, so that we can understand what will come with this tariff adjustment. I am your presenter on today's edition of Your Platform, Pennipher Sikainda. Stay tuned for what's to come on today's program. Thank you so much for being part of today's edition of Your Platform. And as we did mention at the very beginning, today on the program, we are looking at electricity tariffs. And now we are on the streets to just hear what people have to say about this very important subject. Hello, sir. What's your name?
I'm Chileshe Nobet.
Great. What do you have to say about the proposition by Zesco? They want to increase electricity tariffs beginning July.
Okay, from my own view, the tariffs are just too low at the moment. According to the SADC region, we are the lowest who are charging the lowest tariffs in this country. Yeah, I think the tariffs are just okay.
So you don't mind paying a little bit more?
No, it's just too little. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hello, sir.
Yes, how are you?
Very well. What's your name, sir?
My name is Francis Wemba.
Okay. What do you have to say about the electricity tariff hike that is expected this July?
Yeah, the tariff, it is well for Zesco, but some section of people, no, it is not well, because looking at financial aspect, yeah, it might hurt them. But since Zesco want to do its work and to expand the system, it is fine for the country. But otherwise, I don't think they need to increase after this one.
What about you? How do you see it? Because you may have to spend a little bit more on electricity.
Myself, I'm not much hurt, because I really do understand, and I'm working hard for me to meet the whatever Zesco is required.
That sounds like you give it a direct go-ahead.
Yeah, it might go ahead, because you cannot stop it. If we stop it, Zesco will not do its work.
Thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank you.
The tariffs are not okay, otherwise not all the people can manage. I see a business small, so you cannot manage. There are others somewhere who can't afford it.
For you don't want them to increase this July?
Yeah, they should consider the people. It's just good for the Zesco. Not all the people can meet the water. It's not good otherwise. They have to consider the people.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Oh, you're welcome.
Have you heard about the increase in electricity tariff?
Yeah, I've read about it.
Okay, what do you think about that? Do you think it's okay?
No, it's not okay. It's too much. The economy is not even welcoming. In fact, what we need is a decrease, not increment of the tariffs, because as Zambians, we are not even afford even to buy a meal. Things are not okay. We need to look about this.
So you feel Zesco should change their minds?
Definitely, they should just come down, not to increase the tariffs. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Afternoon.
Your name, please?
Juliet Katongo.
What do you think about the intentions by Zesco to increase tariffs by this July?
Especially concerning electricity. Actually, everything has been increased. So if we have been hearing of salary increments, but now if electricity is also increased, whatever they have increased for us, like for me, I'm a civil servant. So if they increase my salary, then again increase electricity, then there's no difference. So it means actually we are being so much affected with these same increments in electricity. I don't know what can be done. Fuel is high. Everything, I think the cost of production, meal, everything is just high. So I don't know where we are going. Seriously, I don't know.
Are you spending so much on electricity at the moment?
A lot. For me, I think it's going up to 300 because we have a geyser, stove, and we have to use all those, especially that we go in the morning. You can't start making a brazier in the morning and just do all that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
What do you think about the plans by Zesco to increase the tariffs?
Actually, it's a very bad plan. It retards development in terms of what the ordinary citizens. For parastatals, yes, it is all right for them to revise the tariffs for the parastatals, like companies like maybe Zamtel, mines and whatever. For those, they are making a lot of profits. But when you look at the ordinary citizen, the ordinary Zambian, especially those who are not in employment, it will really affect their livelihood. The source of income, it's really terrible. It's pathetic for them. Now, if they burden them with the revised tariffs, again, it will be more like they are killing them. So the best thing that they should have done is just to maybe to affect that to parastatals and other companies so that it doesn't trickle down to the ordinary citizen. For me, as an individual, it will also affect me because when I look at my income, already transport, the fuel prices that they increased recently has affected me in terms of transport. When fuel is hiked, a lot of things are affected. So if they increase electricity, again, even those that use electricity in terms of production, what they need to hike the prices on their commodities and on other things. So I think it's not a good idea. What I can like is for them just to put it to the parastatals, those companies, much better that we're not as the ordinary citizens. Already we are facing a lot of hardships in terms of the dollar rate. When you look at it, it's also it has affected our businesses, things like that. So when you look at they should feel for the ordinary citizen, the ordinary people, those that are down there. But when you look at the MPs, the ministers, those people, they don't even pay electricity. So for them, they are comfortable. They can even be happy that the electricity tariffs are hiked, because when you look at them, if at all they have any heart for the ordinary citizens, they're supposed to speak on behalf of the citizens. But this time they are just quiet because they don't buy fuel, they don't buy electricity. So for them, they are comfortable, they are happy. So it shouldn't be like that for the nation to develop.
Economy ni yovuta manga twabikako vinu chitujama saka.
So my light even mfuna basaikireko.
Basaikireko.
Basesco mungawaze ko panchike bande.
I think ndungapembe chabe wachitako lijuice because the economy siri mushi.
Mwandani masema.
Nile chao disilungwe.
So mungatuzeko imwe kunyumba kwanu so pa light mumma spenders ngati.
Sometimes 200 one chakuti but mafriji na stove chabe.
Okay. Mwana mwanga ingankaleko ingakulileko bibi.
Ndiye mevilika. Ndiye meonekera kai ingati walikako chikula. So ipeze kati tujamila ko vindu bambiri.
Ziko.
Thanks.
Mtengo wa malaiti unadola kudala futi ngati bayikirako nishibatipa ilatu.
Sapa mma spending amazingati.
Ni ambili but magula cha ambili. Munga 500 so.
So Zesco mungawaze ko branch pale amine plan.
I think plan yao isiri mushe. Isiri mushe maningi.
Nanga supply mkayona mmaona mungati naimwe bama kupasani mmankala maningi mulo shedding olo ilichebwino kono kusai.
Load shedding ebe mankala ko paja pakumi usebenze mushe ndiye pamene madabwa chat malaiti yaenda. So I think siri mushe maningi. Chamene ninga kambe ko checha kuti awasati bakaikire malaiti. So cha mwamene adili aliche mushe.
This is coming.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What's your name, Mom?
I'm Dokas Chibebe.
We are asking about electricity tariffs. When you look at first and foremost, when you look at the price of electricity, how's it like for you? Do you think it's affordable or not?
With this economy going on, I don't think it's affordable. Plus the increasing that they're trying to do, it will be more expensive for the people, I think. So I don't think it's a good idea for them to increase. Plus the road shading which is taking place, I don't think it's a good idea.
So does it mean also for you, are you able to give us maybe how much you spend on electricity?
A month we go about 500 kwacha. A month, yes, because some of us we even put chickens. So for the chickens plus home home use, it's expensive for us. So it will go more than what we spend now if the tariffs goes high.
What would be your word then to Zesco?
I think they should try and listen to the people because the services comes from the people. So at least when people complain to some of the things, they should get it and try and help the society because the shedding is taking place, plus the increasing. I don't think it's helping us.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Balishan mkwai.
Bwino mlishani mkwai.
Mkwai. Tueben ko fiesta machine.
Ne wantu wanaiti mlinda.
Mle mnapashan pali plan ya Zesco kubikila kama light. Kwamba mjulai.
Kwamba mjulai yala dula bantu abantu bakalachita manage ukwanisha ngefa bale kwanisha hapa.
Pali muspenda shinga pa light.
Pa light to spend 300 per month.
Okay, so ngababikila ko chala dula sana kuli mnankutumwa kwanje.
Aw yala dula bantu kukonka na masalaries fola.
So kutumwa kwa shani Zesco.
Zesco kuti batuwesheshe kwa malaiti ofotilero mbakufa batuweshesheko nefine yaletita yabwela balawo chefindu mumayanda. Okay, thank you.
Would like to get your views on the plans by Zesco to increase tariffs beginning July.
Well, I think it's unfair, like for people who are not in how can I say this? People who are like, okay, like in a salon, people don't get paid a lot of money, you know, like you're considered as a general worker or a casual worker. So when you increase the tariffs, you should also look at, like right now, the dollar rate is high. The salary is going to increase for everyone to accommodate those amounts of money to pay for rentals. It's going to be very, very difficult for everyone because they're not just going to look at the high class. They should look at every group in society, which is going to be very difficult, I think, for everyone because businesses are not even doing very well because of the dollar rate right now.
So you feel electricity increase will affect the cost of doing business?
Yes, it will. It will actually do that because if the dollar is high, meaning everything, even ordering for us like businesses, we have to order goods from abroad, within Africa and out of Africa. So that affects business because then you're looking at how do I increase salaries on workers? It's difficult because there's just too much at stake. So they have to be very considerate. It's not about just looking at people who are in good employment. It's looking at every sector because whether in compounds, in residential areas like Kablonga, everyone is affected because we all need their power. We need Zesco power for everything. So it's really not going to be fair.
I get the impression that with what you've said, you'd rather they reduce or not even consider the increment.
I don't know how much actually increment will be done this time, but then they should be considerate to accommodate everyone, regardless of the fact of if the company is making money. But we are also people, we want their services. So they should conduct a very good survey. If they've done that at all, we don't know. But they should be fair for everyone because it's really going to be tough for everyone.
Finally, would you also be able to describe how the service is? Would you see it as good or a bad service that you get from Zesco?
For now, I can say it's been bad because what we're experiencing is a lot of load shedding, no warnings. Things get damaged, they won't repair. Business, when business goes, when electricity goes, business goes, we don't have clients because everyone will come and they'll need electricity. We can't always rely on generators. It depends on the kind of business you have. Like a salon, it's not safe. We have children. This is a kid's salon. We have children coming in. We can't put a gen set anyhow. We have to consider kids. Kids are everywhere. So they have to be very, very cautious with what they're doing. That's what I can say.
I'd like to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your time.
Firstly, I'd like to welcome you to the interview.
Thank you.
Okay. We'd like to get your views on the plans by Zesco to increase power beginning in July.
Oh, namambela koti baikila malaiti. So, as for us people, malaiti red shading achilamo manigolo baikile malaiti. Still, samuga futiso che. So, tungafuna upemba government bwezeko reduce malaiti chizikula tenzo guli yakudala. Tuma spend down ndamba zambiri.
Mwanga muna restaurant mwanga kamba tima spenda mazingatso.
Or 300.
So yo niyambiri maning so mwana izadulira kwa.
Izadulira kwa mane weka kilako.
So mga pempeko branch kuli ba Zesco na wewe.
Uti wabweze kwa shitako likizi nche wapele kwa pansi.
Zikamo kwa.
Thank you.
What do you think?
Your name, sir?
I'm Piri, Dan Piri. Yes, please.
Your views, sir, on the electricity tariff increase?
That is too exorbitant. It's too exorbitant, honestly. How is the common man going to survive? You know?
What is your experience like at the moment in terms of buying electricity?
Oh, in terms of buying electricity? Is it affordable for you? It's not affordable. It's not affordable. It's not affordable at all.
What would you like to see then?
A reduced tariff, at least, you know? Yes.
We'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for still watching your platform. At this time of the program, we'll now be talking to the Assistant Programs Officer under the Consumer Unit Trust Society, CUTS, and this is Faith Mwamba. Welcome to your platform.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
We are basically talking about the tariffs, electricity tariffs that are being adjusted effective July. First and foremost, what did you make of the adjustment just when it was announced? Do you think it was at a time when the economy or the consumers would have expected?
Thank you for that question. I do not think it is at a time when consumers would have expected it to start with, because I think you will agree with me that over the past few months, there have been so many increments in terms of taxes. Take, for instance, water. A couple of months ago, it was increased by 10%. Talk time in the communication sector, we also had an increment in that particular area. And then now we're having a 25% increment on consumers' electricity tariffs, which is a huge increment, I should say. And I don't think it is something that consumers would have expected. It will certainly have an impact on the cost of living for consumers.
We do actually notice that there's a difference between the domestic tariffs and the commercial tariffs. How fair is that really for the market?
When you look at, I wouldn't say it's fair, because I think what happens is that whatever increment that takes place, the ultimate effect is on the consumers. When you look at the commercial entities, they are in business and they make profits. And then there's this 15% for commercial entities and 25% for consumers. There's this gap in between what they're paying as a tax and on their tariffs. And I think, in all fairness, it's a huge gap.
So when we try to look at the effects that this tariff adjustment will have on the consumers, what will we be looking at?
We'll look at, firstly, their cost of living, because just as of yesterday, the Jusitiera monthly food basket was stating that for an average family to survive in a month, they need to spend about 3,000 kwacha. And that is just an ordinary family, maybe of 4 or 5 people. And when you look at the various commodities, in some millimil, essential commodities, really prices have gone up, and this would just be another blow to consumer welfare. And the sad thing, I think, or the main concern, is that all this is happening at the same time. And this is having a huge, huge impact on consumers, because they have to start adjusting in the way they are living and in trying to meet their means as families.
From your explanations, I get the impression that ultimately our economic fundamentals will equally be affected because of this particular tariff adjustment?
Yes, they will. Well, it's according to the justifications from Zesco or from ERB or the government, they're saying they haven't had any price increments over the past few years. Well, which could be somewhat justified because, again, we are looking at the service that we're getting from them. There's been massive load shedding over the past year. So maybe they could be trying to bridge that gap. But at the same time, I think the government should find a way of cushioning the impact that it's having on the consumers in as much as they want to keep that sector and try and keep it competitive. Yeah.
So do I also get from your explanation that probably from the consumer perspective, it is not really that justified that Zesco has performed well? Or is it that you would still agree that they may still need some tariff increase just so that they can meet their running costs?
Thank you for that question. Well, it is a known fact that they've been trying to manage the power systems in the country, and they do need to find means and ways of improving their performance. But this is what I'm saying, the government should find measures of trying to cushion the whole arrangement in such a way that it benefits both the consumers and the sector itself.
Well, maybe as we close the interview, what would be some of the recommendations from a consumer perspective on how you think electricity as a product can be managed so that it's also easily available and, of course, affordable for the people?
Our recommendations would be that they try and improve on their provision of electricity to the consumers, and certainly the fees, if they at all they increase the tariffs, it should be justified. The services that we get as consumers should be justified, because I think we are entitled to get value for what we pay for, and that is an important thing for a consumer.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Pennipher.
So that was Faith Mwamba, who is the Assistant Programs Officer under the Consumer Unit Trust Society, as we were discussing today's topic, looking at the electricity tariffs that are to be adjusted this July. Stay tuned to your platform. Thank you so much for being part of today's edition of Your Platform. At this moment, I'll be talking to the Acting Director Business Development here at Zesco, and this is Mr. Chitembo Simwanza. Mr. Simwanza, I'd like to welcome you to Your Platform.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, viewers.
Well, on today's program, we are basically talking about tariffs and trying to understand a little more about the recent adjustment, of course, that was announced by the ERB, which has given Zesco an adjustment upwards for tariffs. Let's begin this interview by helping us understand what really has, what are tariffs, first and foremost?
A tariff is the price of the electricity. Like any product, there's a price to it. That price is determined by the cost drivers which determine the cost and eventually the tariff. So when we talk about tariff, we're talking of the price of electricity. Thank you.
Okay. One would want to know, time and again, there are adjustments in the price of this very issue we're talking about. What necessitates this adjustment?
Thank you very much again. Let me give a background in terms of the tariffs. The last tariff increment that Zesco had was in 2010. So for the last 4 years, we've not given any tariff adjustment to the domestic customers. So over a period of time, like in any business, your costs keep escalating. In our case, I can just point out a few or highlight a few. The first one is inflation. In the last 3-4 years, inflation cumulatively has gone up by about 23%, meaning our costs are equally going up. But you can imagine in a business, for 4 years, we've had no increase to the domestic customers. So that is one of the first drivers, cost drivers. The second one is the exchange rates. In our last application, the exchange rate was around 5 kwacha at the time, 5,000 kwacha to $1. Now it's hovering above 6 kwacha to $1. This means that the cost of all our imports, the way Zesco is structured, most of our operations are based on imported materials, spares, vehicles, oil, and so on. All these are imported, so we require a lot of foreign exchange in order to meet these costs. Now, as long as the exchange rate is fluctuating, or the kwacha is depreciating, meaning our cost structure is going up. So those are some of the main drivers. The other one is the issue of projects. My colleague, the Director Generation, will give more detail. But basically, in order to meet the rising demand for electricity by not just the mining customers, but all the agriculture, domestic, and industrial customers, Zesco needs to spend about $5 billion. So in order to meet this expenditure of $5 billion in the next 5 years, we need to have a tariff increase in order for us to raise sufficient revenues in order to finance these projects. But that more detail will be given as the program goes.
How then do you determine the percentage of this tariff adjustment? Because we do note that there are changes. If we look at the adjustments for the domestic customer, and of course, if we look at the industrial customers, who determines that percentage?
Zesco operates in a regulated environment, so that percentage, the detail, is determined by the regulator. But I'll give how it operates. Zesco puts in an application. That application is based on what we call a pricing model, which is in Excel, although I won't go into that detail. But this pricing model is shared between Zesco and the Energy Regulation Board. So we put in the application with with detail of all our cost structure and all the projects that we intend to do. So it's a very open and transparent process. So once we do that, we submit to the regulator, and it's the regulator which has a legal mandate to finally give the tariff. So the tariff we're talking about has been approved by the regulator, having gone through all our cost structure and all our justifications.
Are you able to maybe just for our viewers' sake to just quickly run through the actual adjustments and maybe help us understand the actual figures and how much will they have to start spending on their electricity bills? Does it really mean that we will now be spending much more money?
Yeah, they will be spending slightly. I'll give a bit more detail. But if I can also mention that the mining customers have also had an upward tariff increase. In the last few years, one of the complaints from the customers has been that mining customers are not paying the full cost of the electricity. But we've also increased for the mining customers. In fact, for the mining customers, we've increased twice in the last few years. So they've had an increment in the last few years in excess of about 50%. So in terms of the current, the domestic customers, I won't go into the detail of what, but I can just give you a quick run in terms of an average customer. An average customer who's consuming about 300 kilowatt hours, which is for a medium cost, who was spending around 98 kwacha previously. After the increase, he'll be spending about 120 kwacha. So what we're saying, the increase is minimal, meaning the increase will be about 20 kwacha for a customer who's using about 300 kilowatt hours. His increment is only around 20 kwacha. So this is not a very big increase, especially when you take into account that for 4 years we have not increased to the domestic customers.
How then do you expect maybe the market to respond away from the domestic users? It's very likely that we may see some other supplementary services also going up as a result of this tariff adjustment. In that case, would it be justifiable for us to see such changes?
When you look at, especially, let me talk of the manufacturing industry, the percentage in terms of the input of electricity to their total cost is very small. It ranges from 5 to 10% of their total operating costs. So an increase in electricity, a small increase on electricity price, for example, on the industrial customers, commercial, it's ranging about 10%. So that small increase cannot necessitate a large increase in their operating costs because electricity only accounts for about 10% of their total operating costs. So when you increase 10 on that small percentage, the change on their total cost is very minimal. So we do not expect manufacturers and so on or food producers to use electricity as the excuse. It's just one of the major input costs. And as I say, if something only accounts for 10% of your operating costs, that increase cannot really necessitate a major increase in their price of their goods and services. Thank you.
Well, we'll definitely have to wait and see how the market will respond pertaining to, the adjustment that we have seen. But maybe at this moment, time and again, we have seen, concerns being raised by Zesco, and that's because your concerns as an entity is that we don't have cost-reflective tariffs. What would be the most ideal cost-reflective tariff for Zesco?
I cannot give a definite answer. There's no definite figure at the moment, but maybe just explain what is a cost-reflective tariff. This is a tariff which enables Zesco to meet its full costs. In other words, all our operating costs and all our investment costs and the return on all our assets. That is what is known as a cost-reflective tariff. But I cannot give a definite figure because this figure is like a moving average. It keeps changing depending as the input costs rise. So there's no definite figure. And very much.
So that was Mr. Chitembo Simwanza, who is the Acting Director, Business Development for Zesco. After this short break, I'll be talking to Mr. Linus Chanda, and he is the Acting Chief Operations Officer right here at Zesco. Stay tuned to your platform. Thank you so much for staying with us. Like I mentioned just before our short break, I'm now joined by Mr. Linus Chanda, who is the Acting Chief Operations Officer here at Zesco. Welcome to your platform.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, viewers.
We've been talking to Mr. Simwanza, and he did highlight quite a lot on what necessitates tariff adjustments. But in the course of our discussion, he did highlight that Zesco has a number of projects that will need, probably additional funding. Help us understand what really is the link between these projects and tariff hikes.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me take 3 steps behind and just look at what the mandate for Zesco is. Zesco's mandate and business is to supply electricity to all Zambians. In fact, with the current government, this mandate has been amplified because the government has put a lot of emphasis in making sure that we provide electricity to the rural areas. Now, in order to do this, we cannot sit with the same infrastructure that we've had over time. For example, the last time we built a large power station in this country was in the late 70s when we finished building Kariba North Bank. We've never built a large power station until recently. So the mandate of giving electricity to the Zambians, to the poor, means that our customer base is going to increase, means that we have to build more power stations, we have to build more transmission lines, more distribution lines, and so on. So all these are the projects that Zesco has at the moment. And in order to do this, we have to find the money. Now, like my colleague mentioned, our tariff at Zesco is not cost reflective, meaning that we do not charge the amount of money that we spend to produce a unit of electricity. So because of that, we have to find some money to fill that gap for us to be able to invest in the projects that we're doing. So we have projects that are running in generation, in transmission, in distribution, and all these are driven by the customers. The customer base has expanded. We need to take power to the rural areas, and also the customer base in the urban areas has expanded as well.
Let's move on to one pretty much crucial issue, which I'm sure most people are dying to hear me ask you, and that's to do with when we are likely to see load shedding to come to an end, if at all it will ever come to an end. What is really the link between this power distribution or generation projects that you have and the possible future that we may have that will be load shedding free?
Okay. Yes, load shedding is a very sensitive issue, and we know that as Zesco, we are condemned for load shedding. I can also tell you that it's critical success factor number 1 in Zesco in our performance, everything that we put together, how we package our behavior, how we package our projects, how we package our work, is actually aimed at addressing load shedding. Now, being critical success factor number one, it's something that we want to get rid of. The horizon of 5 years that I spoke about, which is effectively supposed to end in 2018, if I remember correctly, is meant to cushion load shedding. Now, how does load shedding come about? Load shedding comes about simply because consumption is higher than production. Now, electricity production is not just generation. In 2012, before 2010, we made a pledge that come 2010 we'll get rid of load shedding, because at the time we had less generation compared to consumption, and we started implementing projects which were meant to increase power generation. Our project slipped in terms of time, but as we speak now, we've managed to bring 360 megawatts of generation on board, additional to what we had. So our capacity is increased in excess of 2,000 megawatts. And as we speak, given the figures of consumption and generation today, generation is higher than consumption. But like I said, in the electricity industry, load shedding becomes complex because it doesn't end with the production. It also ends with the conveyance and the receipt of electricity by the customers. Much as we have a lot of generation, you would find that the lines, those conductors and the transformers that take power to the customers are small in size, so to speak. A typical example I can give is here in Lusaka, in the area of Woodlands. We had the old Woodlands where we had dedicated distribution lines supplying power to that area. Suddenly there's Chalala. So the lines and the transformers supplying electricity to that area suddenly become small. So Zesco has to find or have to put in investment to build new lines, or indeed to change the conductor size and to change the transformer sizes. And those are some of the projects that we're doing in order to try and address load shedding. Now, in recent times, most of our customers confuse load shedding and overloading. And I would like to spend just a little bit of time to explain the two. Most of the situations, what we're experiencing at the moment is overloading. And this is simply because, again, the consumption is higher than what that little transformer in the area is able to deliver. So because the consumption is higher, the transformer, instead of getting burnt, we have special devices that will just switch it off. So in that particular sense, some customers would say we've been load shedded. No, it's simply because what you're consuming in that area is higher than what the transformer is able to give. And up till the time that we replace that transformer or change that line, that situation will continue. So what do we do as Zesco? That is why we come to you, the customers, and say, please switch off that equipment that you're not using. If you can stagger your cooking, don't cook at the same time at 19 hours. If you can cook at 15 hours, why not? If you can cook at 22 hours, why not? But the bottom line is that when we have overloading, to avoid loss of power, we have to switch off that equipment that we're not using. We have to make sure that it's off. In as far as load shedding is concerned, when we are going to switch off a customer, we always go to the media. We are in the newspaper, we will say, please, in this particular area, we're going to switch you off on this day, between this time and that time. We are also on SMS, we will communicate to say, we will switch you off because we want to do something, or we're going to do load shedding. So basically, that is the two, and that is the situation that we have at the moment. In terms of when it's going to end, very, very, very soon. I think that we have projects. This is not countrywide. We have projects that are area specific. For example, I'm conscious of areas in Lusaka like Makeni, areas in Lusaka like Woodlands, State Lodge, and all those areas in Bauleni, where we still have load shedding. And this is because the transformation capacity we have from a bulk supply point in Waterworks is not big enough to give electricity that they need, and we are replacing those. As we tail off the end of this year, that should be the end, the thing of the past in those areas.
Much as you are giving us that assurance, I'm just keen to understand quickly before we get to wind up the discussion. If we are consistently recording growth in the number of households that are being set up, new investments coming in, how sure are we, or what assurance do we really get that certainly there will be an end to the high rate of load shedding, take into account that the growth of the economy is not constant?
Okay. Again, let's look at the history. Because of the low tariffs, historically, Zesco found it very difficult to invest in the infrastructure that is supposed to keep up with the economic development. Now, we who are running Zesco at the moment have this challenge to make sure that load shedding finishes now, and to make sure that we have plans in place that will keep up with economic development. The 5-year plan that I spoke about is one such activity. In fact, it's the activity that we have in Zesco. We are doing all these exercises to get rid of the current scenario, but we are also investing in the infrastructure to make sure that the future consumption is met. I referred to Kariba North Bank Extension, 360 megawatts, which we just commissioned. I should point out that in 2 months' time or so, we'll be adding 15 megawatts coming from Mbala at a plant called Lunzua, which project we've upgraded from under a megawatt to almost 15 megawatts. Next year, we hope to commission 120 megawatts in Itezitezi. Tailing off towards 2016, we hope to add in the excess of 45 megawatts, if my figures serve me correctly, in the northern province at Shimba, at Musonda, and at Lusiwasi, and so on. So you can see all these projects that are futuristic. They're actually meant to address that economic development that we're talking about. In the distribution area, same thing. We have countrywide projects that we're running to try and upgrade transformers, to try and upgrade distribution lines. We're building new distribution lines. We're building new transmission lines. I should refer to the project we're about to start in Northwestern Province. We are removing all those diesel generators that they have, and we are replacing them with a sub-transmission line that will make sure that all the districts in Northwestern Province are connected to the national grid. And we're not just doing that, we're also going to cut through the park, running from Mumbwa into Northwestern Province to provide another corridor to convey power out of the generation plant, which is sitting in the southern part of Zambia, into Northwestern Province. We have projects that are aligned in Northern Province where we're going to put another big transmission line out of Serenge into Kasama, stopping over in Impika. We have another project that's running again out of Serenge into Chipata and tailing towards Mafinga. So we are not sitting behind. In terms of trying to meet what national economic development is, to keep up with that pace, we have projects that we've lined up, and we keep an eye on all these activities in order to make sure that our plans are fine-tuned to meet with what is happening in the economy.
Well, thank you so much for that explanation, but I guess we would spend pretty much all day talking about electricity, given that there's so many offshoots to it, but we'll give you this opportunity to just give us your closing remarks as we end the interview.
Well, thank you very much. And for the customers out there, my message has always been simple, threefold. First, it's the issue of switching off what we're not using. Electricity that we have at the moment could be enough, but it's not yet enough. So when we are not using that room, we switch off that power. When we're not using that geyser, we switch off that geyser. When we are not using that TV, that music equipment, we switch it off, because that power we are saving is going to benefit the next person. And also, the only way we can avoid the inconvenience of overload is by switching off that equipment that we're not using. My second message is related to tariffs. Zesco is your company. It's a Zambian company. It is not an enemy to anyone in Zambia. it's actually a proponent to development in the country. So when we come to you, the customers, and say that we're going to increase electricity, it's not that we want to alienate ourselves. No, it's because we realize electricity is a conveyance to development, and we just want to make sure that the correct amount of money that we spend to produce it is what the customer is paying for. And lastly, is the issues to do with we who are in Zesco sometimes may be failing. And I'm conscious of our colleagues out there who want to get a little something beyond what they earn from Zesco. For them to connect electricity to you, they'll say, no, pay me, then I'll bring you the pole. I would appeal to the customers out there that if you get such a person, please feel free to report such a person, because we would not tolerate any form of corruption in the corporation.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chanda, for being part of your platform.
It was a pleasure.
That was Mr. Linus Chanda, the Acting Chief Operations Officer here at Zesco, and he was also just addressing pertinent issues pertaining to distribution projects and so much more that is really taking place in dealing with load shedding and a number of issues that we have addressed in depth related to today's program on electricity tariffs. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Your Platform. That's all we could package for you. On the program today, we were looking at the adjustment in electricity tariffs, which will begin in July. And that means that most of the end users will be paying a little more for the power that they'll be buying. Well, join us next week with another interesting program. My name is Pennipher Sikainda, being your presenter today. Goodbye and God bless you.